The struggle to maintain your innocence.
I'll be along here any minute. I better go.
Maintain that wonder and that divine spark.
That's right!
In a world that's seemingly cruel.
Alrighty then.
And out of control. Also, the grief aspect of it. How do you keep that together when you've been hit by a freight train? And, I have. And I know what that's like. I don't believe that any actor can really do a part unless that part finds them. You don't find parts, they find you when you're ready to do them.
Spread my wings and fly away.
And when you're informed and you have those feelings. So to me, when I paint, I'm being painted. When I write, I'm being written. And when I act, I'm being acted through it. It's there to express my truth, and it finds me.
A cheerful look, funny faces, sharp jokes. This is how many people know Jim Carrey. His characters are bright and extraordinary. You remember them from the first minute. But behind the mask of a jester, there is a completely different personality. And his road to desired glory was built on tragic moments of his biography. Where did Jim get his unique facial expressions from? Why did he put a sock over his genitals? And why was he unlucky in relationships? Welcome to the Biographer channel.
Hi!
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and bell to get amazing and sometimes shocking facts about your favorite celebrities. Subscribe and let's start.
I am your beloved Count Olaf.
You have probably heard the childhood of this popular comedian was not so rosy. Jim Eugene Carrey was born on January 17, 1962 in the Canadian city of Newmarket. He became the fourth and the youngest child in the family of a housewife and accountant. His mother, Kathleen, was a failed singer, and his father, Percy, was a self-taught saxophonist who had given up his musical dreams to support his family. The family was poor.
But when I was about 14 or 15, my father lost his job, and I actually became homeless for quite some time. Of course, I grew up in Canada, so I thought we had just gone camping.
Kathleen was often sick and was addicted to pain medication. Her mental state made life more complicated. Her hypochondria, combined with neurosis, led to the fact that Kathleen was considered crazy. Jim's mother often talked about how she would die soon. This placed in the soul of the boy a great fear that his parents might suddenly pass away. I remember being 7 years old and my mother at the dinner table saying things like, "My brain is deteriorating at an incredible rate," or "My angina's acting up, I could go at any time." Things that would just shake me to the core. That's why the little boy took all his time to make his mother laugh, so that it would become a little easier for her. And that was how his first comical performances appeared. The future actor grew up closed and lonely, therefore creativity became an outlet for him. He painted, composed poetry, and made funny faces. In an interview, Carrey admitted that the mirror was his only friend. "Well, I spent most of my time in my room staring at a mirror. I never knew I was supposed to socialize." Later, he realized that he could bring smiles not only to his family, but also to classmates and teachers at school. The love of grimacing was so strong that the boy was allowed to make for his class a 15-minute performance every day. Jim began recording skits on camera and even ventured to send 80 of his funny face photos to the popular comedy show Carol Burnett. At that time, Carrey was only 11 years old, but the first disappointment awaited him. He received neither an invitation nor even an answer. The challenges for his family were just beginning. When Jim was 12, his father lost his job and they lost their home. Therefore, the Carrey family had to travel around the country and look for any opportunities to earn money. So, having found a temporary shelter in the suburbs of Toronto, Carrey Sr. went to work as a security guard, and his children, after school in the evenings, also worked as security guards and cleaners. Jim became insecure. He began to get angry at the whole world. antidepressants and humor came to the rescue, which helped to throw out internal aggression. At the age of 14, Jim got into bad company and carried a bat with him everywhere. "I was angry," he remembered. "My father was hurting, so I blamed the world."
Well, when my father lost his job, I was pissed. It was like
Sad.
one of those things. My dad, how dare the universe?
Right.
At the age of 15, another disappointment awaited the comedian. And this time, it was about the stage. His father brought him to the local Yuck Yucks Club, where the young man was given the opportunity to speak to the public. The family needed additional income. Percy saw the ability of his son, so he suggested Jim use the humorous talent to earn more money. An attempt to become a stand-up comedian failed miserably. Jim left the stage booed.
Well, that was Yuck Yucks. That was this place called Yuck Yucks. It was downtown Toronto. It was like it was a tragically hip place with, people with, dark colors on.
And this was the last straw for the young man. He stopped performing and withdrew into himself. Despite all the hardships, Jim remembers his parents with warmth. "She was very sick in a lot of ways. She was lovely too. She was always there for me. She was always there in the house," he said about his mother. And he even perceived health problems as part of their lives, ending his memories of his mother with the conclusion, "In a sense, we're all abandoned." The comedian's relationship with his father was a little different. Jim admired him and wanted to be the same as Percy. He said he was an incredible person. "My dad was the guy who could just stand up in the middle of a room and everybody would be wrapped around his finger." Both his parents and his 3 siblings supported Carrey in his comedic endeavors. In one of the interviews, he admitted that they considered him a special child. "I was always from another planet, but one that they enjoyed and encouraged. They'd all be like, 'Yeah, drag Jim out here.'" The rough patch for the Carreys ended when Percy got a job at a steel mill in the port city of Hamilton, Ontario. The family settled in the nearby town of Burlington, where Jim lived for another 8 years. There he graduated from Aldershot High School and even formed the Spoons musical band, playing in new wave style. When Jim turned 16, he decided that he had enough of his studies. By this point, marks and relationships at school had completely deteriorated. His father cried, but didn't forbid him anything. Although later, Carrey Jr. said that sometimes he really wanted this. After graduating from school, Jim went to work at the same steel mill. He later admitted that if he hadn't had a career in show business, he probably would have worked at the same factory and thought that this was the best job in the world. But it was the support of his father, who took him to all the clubs in Toronto, that helped him achieve more and become who he is. Carrey said the experience taught him to look at failures differently. As his father's story showed, it's always possible to fail at something that seems safe. After all, it's much better to fall down doing what you love to do and truly want to do.
I learned that you can fail at what you don't love, so you might as well do what you love. There's really no choice to be made.
In 1979, Jim decided to try his hand again on the same stage at the Yuck Yucks Club. This time, the audience took his performance well. Since that time, Jim began cooperation with the manager, Litris Spivak, who took the guy under his protection and made him a real local star. People from all over the neighborhood came to Jim's performances. The comedian quickly moved from open mic to paid performances. Having conquered Toronto, the young artist moved to Los Angeles, where he was just as readily accepted on local stages. And it was here, on this stage, that Jim was noticed by another eminent comedian, Rodney Dangerfield, and offered to act as his opening act during the tour. Of course, Jim agreed. But the collaboration didn't last long. At the end of the tour, Dangerfield settled in Los Angeles, and Jim decided to take a crack at Hollywood. So the young man began to work in the club, the Comedy Store, and attended all available auditions at the same time. Among them, there was an attempt to pass the audition for the program Saturday Night Live, channel NBC season 1980 to 1981, but it failed. In addition, Joel Schumacher arranged for him to audition for the DC Cab movie, but nothing came of it. In his performances, Carrey mostly parodied celebrities. He enjoyed success with the public, and in 1984, People magazine named him one of the best young American comedians. After the experience with Rodney, Jim decided to do something unusual for that time. He didn't try to imitate his predecessors, but on the contrary, he discarded all the knowledge and experience that he saw, and just let himself be who he actually was. There was a notable case when the 20-year-old actor went on the stage of the club completely naked, except for the sock worn on his penis. Jim's one of those people who comedians talk about like he's in a different business than the rest of us. His friend Judd Apatow talked about him. It cannot be said that all of Jim's appearances on stage were successful. In an interview, he spoke about an incident during a performance at the Comedy Store. The audience didn't like what they saw on stage so much that they began to throw chairs at the actor. They only calmed down when Jim announced that he was leaving the stage. Then I crawled through the audience on my hands and knees, popped up behind the piano, and started banging on the keys, singing, "I hate you all, you gave me cancer." And then I got in the car and I cried all the way home. In 1982, Jim began to conquer television. He appeared in the stand-up show An Evening at the Improv, and in 1983, he starred in the all-night entertainment show. From this period, the comedian had new dreams, not just to entertain people on stage, but from TV screens as well. Gradually, dreams began to come true, though not immediately successful. In 1981, Carrey landed the lead role of a young comedian in Rubberface, which became for him, in some way, an autobiographical film. The tape tells about the merry fellow Tony, who temporarily works as a dishwasher in a nightclub and dreams of becoming a stand-up show star in the club where he works. As you probably guessed, Tony was played by Jim. In 1983, a comedy musical with the participation of a young actor, Copper Mountain, was released. Both films were low budget and received extremely low ratings in the end. On IMDb, Copper Mountain is rated 2 out of 10. In 1984, the artist was invited to the children's animated sitcom The Duck Factory. From that moment on, Jim had a feeling that his career was going up. He even invited his parents to Los Angeles. However, the program closed after 3 months and his relatives had to be sent home. But during its existence, the show managed to give Jim a lot of useful contacts and attract the attention of directors. In 1984, another story with his participation was released. It was Finders Keepers by Richard Lester. The film was an adaptation of Charles Dennis's novel The Next to Last Train Ride, where Jim got a small role as an empty-headed teenager named Lane Bindleclough. The film received mixed reviews. The average viewer didn't really understand the picture. It has just 2 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics warmly received the movie. James Monaco reviewed the film in his book, The Movie Guide, writing a crazy, quirky comedy from director Lester that starts slowly and warms up to provide some funny moments. In 1985, a comedy, Once Bitten, with elements of horror films was released. It was about a difficult vampire life in modern realities. The role of the teenager virgin Mark, played by Carrey, gave a boost to his acting career and became the first step to celebrity and recognition. But the closure of the Duck Factory wrecked Jim. There began a rough patch in his career. He was forced to send his relatives back and fell into depression. In 1986, the actor received the episodic role of Walter Goetz in the film Peggy Sue Got Married, directed by Francis Coppola. Despite the difficulties of filming, 20-hour days, 6 days a week, conflict and problems with Nicolas Cage, the film received good reviews after the release. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film received 8 out of 10 from film critics and grossed over $41 million at a cost of around $7 million. It was Coppola's box office success. In 1987, the film got 2 Golden Globe nominations for Best Motion Picture, Comedy and Musical, and Best Performances by an Actress in a Motion Picture, Comedy or Musical, Kathleen Turner, and 3 Academy Award nominations. Soon the actor had the opportunity to take part in the musical melodrama Earth Girls Are Easy by Julian Temple. Carrey's colleagues on the set were Gina Davis, Julie Brown, Jeff Goldblum, and Damon Wayans. The film was originally scheduled for release in 1986, but funding problems, finding distributors, and Temple's meticulous attention to detail delayed the release. As a result, it was released only in 1989 and didn't pay off, earning a little more than a third of the amount that was spent on production. Film critics also didn't appreciate the final result. For example, Leonard Maltin called it an infectiously goofy musical and went on to cite some good laughs and an endearing performance by Davis. In 1987, Jim Carrey married Melissa Woolmer, a waitress from the Comedy Store. They met right in that club where Jim periodically performed with his concerts. After dating for 2 years, the couple decided to tie the knot. Melissa once told Rolling Stone that it was an absolutely perfect day and that she and Jim were crying like idiots at the prospect of being together for life. By the time of their wedding, Woolmer was pregnant with their daughter, Jane Carrey, who was born on September 6, 1987. And the first period of their marriage was not easy. Melissa worked 2 jobs and Jim was making $25 a night performing stand-up. Despite the fact that the comedian's stage number was very peculiar, he imitated a cockroach and stuffed himself inside a children's piano while another comedian was performing on stage. The public was dismayed, but Melissa firmly believed in her husband's talent. She knew one day he would become a legend. The same year, their daughter, Jane Erin Carrey, was born. Jim sometimes had bouts of uncontrollable aggression. The couple quarreled all the time. In addition, the higher Jim's career went, the worse his relationship with Melissa became. After the death of the actor's parents in the 90s, his mother passed away in 1991 and dad in 1994. He was crippled by depression, and his wife's attempts to help were unsuccessful. Antidepressants also gave little relief. The only thing that could help Jim was a healthy lifestyle. The path to fame was also not easy. Before the first real success in Hollywood, he worked for it for 9 years, and only at 28, things finally got better. In 1991, the comedy High Strung by Roger Nygaard was released. There, Jim got the unusual role of Death, who moonlighted as a driver and offered to take the main character to his goal. There were rumors that Jim accepted this tiny role only because of his friendship with Steve Odekirk, who played this most important role of children's writer Thane Furrows. Their union as screenwriter and actor continued in such films as Ace Ventura 2: When Nature Calls and Bruce Almighty. Despite the fact the film was shot in just 13 days and was not particularly popular at the box office, it pleased with the director's approach to creating an atmosphere of urgency and visual tension. Despite positive reviews and winning awards, the producers failed to secure theatrical or home video distribution. According to Roger Nygaard, "I learned the film industry is like selling shoes. They all want brand names, and we didn't have a brand name. Steve Odekirk is quite well known as a stand-up comic, but that didn't matter to exhibitors. They wanted film names." 1992 gave the world another movie with Jim. It was Doing Time on Maple Drive by Ken Olin. It was the actor's first dramatic role after a series of comedic characters. He played an imperfect son, Tim, who grew up in a supposedly ideal family. Later in an interview, director Ken Olin said that if he knew about Jim's comedic past, he probably never would have cast him as Tim. But everything worked out as it should. Jim flawlessly portrayed the alcoholic Tim and gave the world the opportunity to see him in a different way, to look at his dramatic talent, which later was able to be seen in all its glory in his other works. At the same time, Carrey starred in the comedy television series In Living Color, which aired on Fox in 1990 through 1994. Thanks to the non-standard sketch show, Jim became loved by the audience in such an image that played into his hands for a long time. A lot of antics, reincarnations, and far from gentle humor. One of the most popular was the image of security inspector Bill Burns and female bodybuilder Vera DeMilo. In addition, in 1991, his own project was released. It was the show Jim Carrey: Unnatural Act, which he dedicated to his mother, who died shortly before. Another interesting fact indicates the purposefulness of the actor.
And I actually wrote myself a check, and this is for real. This is not a joke. This is for real. I wrote myself a check for $10 million per picture.
And if by this moment it was not a realistic amount for the actor, then soon everything changed dramatically. Either Jim had a presentiment or faith in his own strength helped him. But But already in 1993, Jim got a role that radically changed his life. Who has already guessed what role I'm talking about? Pause and write it in the comments. Well, he began filming Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, a low-budget film directed by Tom Shadyac. The future hit went through a difficult path before being released to the screens. No one wanted to sponsor the script. None of the eminent comedians wanted to take part there. Therefore, Jim himself became a screenwriter. He came up with the image of Ventura, including his famous hairstyle, and tried to improvise during filming. In addition, he invited his favorite musical band, Cannibal Corpse, to participate in the filming. The set was shared with Jim by Courtney Cox, Sean Young, and Dan Marino. Carrey said of his approach, "I knew this movie was going to either be something that people really went for, or it was going to ruin me completely. From the beginning of my involvement, I said that the character had to be rock and roll. He had to be the 007 of Pet Detectives. I wanted to be unstoppably ridiculous, and they let me go wild." Jim's goal was simple, but at the same time unusual: to make fun of the main character. "My plan was not to join Hollywood, it was to destroy it," he said. And a few days before release, Carrey's manager invited him and broke the news. Two of the most influential film critics, Siskel and Ebert, strongly criticized the film after a preliminary review. But Jim's plan worked. The picture came out on the screens and made a real boom effect. His hero became a pop icon and entered the 100 Immortal Characters according to the Empire magazine. And this role brought Jim real fortune and world fame.
For God's sakes, Jim, I'm a doctor, not a fool, man!
The actor was bombarded with offers. The film brought a big final box office of more than $100 million at an expense of $15 million, and the well-deserved MTV Movie Awards presented to Carrey. The Los Angeles Times reported, "Audiences are responding enthusiastically to Carrey's frenzied antics." The film is especially a hit with the 10 to 20-year-old age group it was originally targeted for. Box office grosses indicate that many fans are going back to see the film again. Surprisingly, film critics called Carrey the worst rising star and awarded him the Golden Raspberry for the role of an eccentric detective. Carrey plays like he's been put in a dynamo, and the fee is paid for the calories that he spent. He's a hyperactive weirdo who makes weird faces and twists his speech. Roger Ebert said about him. No less popular were two more works by Jim this year. Following Ventura came The Mask, directed by Charles Russell, where the actor got the main role of a modest, unfortunate bank clerk, Stanley Ipkiss, who, thanks to a magic mask, turned into an omnipotent evil. Carrey's partner was Cameron Diaz, for whom this role was a debut and launched a future career. Later, it became known that due to the fact that Carrey's previous film was crushed by critics, creators didn't want to take him for the main role. When the director suggested bringing in Carrey, the New Line Cinema thought he was out of his mind. By the way, The Mask was originally conceived as a horror film and was based on the rather bloody Dark Horse comic book written by John Arcudi. However, when Russell decided to hire Jim Carrey, he decided to turn this story into a comedy, which indirectly indicates how the actor was perceived in Hollywood. Jim brilliantly coped with the dual role, and it was there that the features of his talent appeared.
Pardon me?
I'm talking through a thorough command of facial expressions and body flexibility and plasticity, and the plausibility of images. According to the original idea, the huge teeth of the mask were to be used only for silent scenes. However, Jim showed a knack and learned to talk with these overgrown teeth, which gave additional eccentricity to the hero. Carrey associated his hero with his father, Percy, and the flamboyant costume worn by his character The Mask was inspired by a costume once made by his mother, Kathleen, for Jim's first attempt at stand-up comedy. In an interview, he recalled, "My character in The Mask is talking about me. When I put on my mask, I can do anything, be anything. We all wear a mask, and when one guy takes his mask off, suddenly everyone's mask just looks like a mask." And even taking into account the fact that the film has a number of shortcomings, problematic dialogues, not fully developed characters, and sometimes offensive stereotypes, harsh film critics couldn't help but appreciate The Mask, which has become a cult film. especially for Jim's character. But at the same time, the film turned out to be very unusual. It all adds up to something that's part musical romantic comedy, part comic book crime flick, and special effects showcase. There's juvenile humor and nods to Tex Avery, literal eye-popping visuals, swing music, and Cuban Pete. A subplot about crooks making their play to take over a city, and a very smart Jack Russell Terrier. Russell recalled that when he showed the script to Jim, he said, "My God, it was like it was written for me." The role was so fitting. The film grossed $350 million and received nominations for many prestigious awards, MTV Movie Awards, BAFTA, Golden Globe for Carrey, and even an Oscar. And Carrey received a fee of $450,000, which seemed unthinkable before. For Jim, the nomination for the Golden Globe was the first serious recognition from film critics.
Thank you. You love me. You really love me.
The next film that continued Jim's success was the famous film by the Farrelly brothers, Dumb and Dumber. The actor got the role of a young limousine driver, Lloyd Christmas. Not to say that the picture was distinguished by the sublimity of dramatic thought. There were flat, below-the-belt jokes, eccentric adventures of the main characters, and Carrey's energy. To make Lloyd Christmas look funnier on screen, Jim removed the filling from 2 of his front teeth. Jim also scored the film's final scene, and it worked.
What's great about it because... Right, exactly. It's like you don't have to look it up, you know? It's just...
I want to see something dumb.
The film was well received by critics and audiences alike, and Carrey received $7 million and his first MTV Award for Best Comedy Performance. However, he didn't cope with the role of husband. Constant quarrels, lack of money, and then the actors' tour schedules finally undermined the relationship between Jim and Melissa. There was another reason. They say that the actor's romance with actress Lauren Holly stirred the pot after the filming of the Dumb and Dumber movie. In the 9th year, the marriage broke up. Jim himself became the initiator. According to Melissa, the day before they celebrated their 6th wedding anniversary, Jim rented a hall for 2 and sang a serenade to her. Then he went to shootings in Florida and never returned. He told his wife about the breakup by phone. Jim didn't deny his guilt. "It's hard to live with me," he once admitted. People close to the family confirmed his words. They say that the actor is a great guy on the first date, but at the same time, Jim desperately needs to be with someone, and then just as desperately needs to be alone. "My first marriage failed because we couldn't have a normal, quiet life. It's very difficult to film, to create, to experience all this craziness every day, and then just return home. After emotional overload, it's very difficult for me to calm down." Divorce was not easy. There was a conflict between the former spouses on financial grounds. Melissa claimed that Jim tried to fake the date of their divorce so that the ex-wife would not receive part of the royalties for The Mask.
Sorry, fellas. Way's not one enough.
He says we split June 15, 1993, which oddly enough just happens to be the day he signed on for $7 million for The Mask. Carrey nevertheless paid his wife compensation and promised to pay an extra $10,000 each month for their child support. According to Melissa, Jim showed complete disregard for their little girl and called her only once a week during the filming of The Mask. In addition, she argued the $10,000 that Carrey was obliged to pay was not enough for their daughter to lead a decent life. In its content, the ex-wife of the actor included, among other things, bodyguards, riding lessons, and a luxury car. It's a very tired Hollywood cliche, but it was uppermost in his mind to be a star instead of having an intact family. We knew the pitfalls, but he didn't keep his end of our bargain. Melissa moved to New York and remained alone for a long time, and Jim had a rather public romance with Lauren Holly. In 1995, another film was released where Carrey played the role of a bad guy, Batman Forever, directed by Joel Schumacher. The image of the Riddler became another successful image in Jim's piggy bank. Just look, he seems to be copied from him. But later, Jim told that the role was not easy for him.
It was really physically taxing.
you know, because it just so much going on at once. A lot of the times there was bombs blowing off and me spinning the cane and trying to think of lines or doing whatever at the same time. And there was a lot of times there was a lot at stake, you know, that I couldn't go back and fix if it didn't go right, you know. So there's a lot of pressure there, but it was still fun.
The actors' partners in the set were such stars as Val Kilmer, Tommy Lee Jones, Nicole Kidman, and Drew Barrymore. The film was a follow-up to 1992's Batman Returns, but the film's tone was changed from Burton's bleak delivery to a family thriller variant with an exuberant amount of color and scenery. That was where Jim's talent came in handy. Unfortunately, the shooting was overshadowed by the conflict between Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones. Tommy literally hated Jim and told him that right during their conversation. And he went to hug me and he said, "I hate you. I really don't like you. I cannot sanction your buffoonery." I was the star and that was the problem, he said. And this was not far from reality by that time. After all, the actor very quickly rose to the level of a star and was the center of attention in any room he entered. Despite this, Jim always stated in various interviews that he had a lot of respect for Lee Jones as an actor. It's possible that the reason for the disagreement was ordinary envy. Dumb and Dumber, where Carrey took part, came out simultaneously with the work of Lee Jones's Cobb, which failed at the box office. The Batman was met with mixed reviews from audiences, but did well at the box office with $336 million and was the second highest grossing film in 1995. It received Oscar nominations for Best Cinematography, Best Sound and Best Effects, and Sound Effects Editing. Jim was nominated for an MTV Movie Award for Best On-Screen Villain. The series of victories was continued by the sequel Ace Ventura 2: When Nature Calls, which grossed twice as much as the first film and a number of awards. The actor received the Kids' Choice Award as Favorite Actor, 2 MTV Movie Awards at once in the categories of Best Actor and Best Comedy Role. However, on the set of this film, things were not rosy. They say that Carrey didn't want to act in any sequel at all. Therefore, when he was persuaded, he created awkwardness on the set and slowed down the process in every possible way. Since then, for almost 20 years, Ace Ventura 2: When Nature Calls has been the only sequel to a film where Carrey starred a second time. Carrey ruined this statistic only in 2014 with the movie Dumb and Dumber 2. 1996 gave viewers another comedy film with Carrey's participation, The Cable Guy, directed by Ben Stiller.
Well, look who decided to show.
The actor played in tandem with Matthew Broderick. At the time of release, it was believed that the picture would bury the careers of both actors. The beloved comedy joke actor got a rather unusual gloomy role, the cable guy Chip, who abruptly turned from a charming weird guy into a maniac who pursued the main character.
I just want to hang out.
The image turned out to be too lively, close, and at the same time, frightening. The film itself swings from thriller to comedy, and sometimes to romantic drama. By the way, Jim had the right to vote on making edits to the script. So during one of these discussions in a bar, Carrey came up with the idea for the Midnight Express parody that appeared in the movie, simply writing "Tits on Glass" on a bar napkin. During a scene in the medieval times, Jim Carrey improvised by taking Matthew Broderick's chicken skin and impersonating Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. If you look at Matthew's reaction, you can see that his laughter and surprise were genuine. The Cable Guy didn't get huge popularity, but brought Jim $20 million and a number of awards. Kids' Choice Awards in the category of Favorite Actor, MTV Movie Award in the categories of Best Actor and Best Screen Villain, and also a nomination for the MTV Movie Award for the Best Fight in the scene with Matthew Broderick. In the same year, Carrey took part in the program Saturday Night Live. Here, the actor shot humorous sketches and parodies of popular films and celebrities, and also created musical parodies. In the show, Jim was able to show his artistry in all its glory. He sang, danced disco, pretended to be a tourist, played the role of a fitness trainer, and even improvised ballet steps. The Roxbury Guys sketch, in which he starred with Will Ferrell and Chris Kattan, gained great fame, which would later be made into a film, A Night at the Roxbury. A year after the divorce, Carrey was again trying to build a family. Relations with Lauren Holly developed rapidly, and already in 1996, the couple decided to legalize their relationship. The actress denied her involvement in Jim's breakup with his first wife. "They kept calling me a homewrecker. I feel for Melissa, but they were completely apart when Jim and I met." Jim's divorce from his first wife created so much noise, the paparazzi pursued the lovers all the time, and instead of a chic wedding, Lauren got a modest registration. Their relationship lasted only 9 months. An attempt to save the marriage was unsuccessful. There were several reasons why feelings subsided so quickly. In one of the interviews, Jim admitted that he could be too quick-tempered, and during a quarrel, he could throw various objects at walls. Another reason was Holly's love for noisy parties, which the actor didn't appreciate. In an interview, Lauren claimed that the reason for their breakup was the obsession of the paparazzi.
But we made our lives, it was all about running away from them and making sure we had privacy. And when we got divorced, I had a really hard time because no one ever really had the story right or anything, and I always felt like everybody knew my personal business, and not to mention the fact that I was going through a heartbreak. So I would go and get a coffee, and I could swear that the person giving me coffee was like, "Ooh, so sorry, and you're a gold digger."
Jim's rise in popularity didn't end there. In 1997, the cult comedy with him in the title role, Liar Liar, by Tom Shadyac was released. This time can be called the peak of his career. For this film, the actor turned down the role of Dr. Evil in Austin Powers' International Man of Mystery. The story follows a successful lawyer who mysteriously cannot lie anymore. And this feature has two sides, destroying his career and it saves his family. By the way, the role of lawyer Fletcher Reed was originally offered to Robin Williams, but in the end, they settled on Carrey. And they made the right decision. Do you agree?
Yes!
Jim Carrey later revealed that constantly being expected to give increasingly manic performances during the film's shoot eventually took its toll on him. He was so dedicated to his work that in the famous bathroom scene, we don't hear an overdub of sound. Jim actually banged his head on the bathroom, the floor, and the urinals. In one of the interviews, he confessed, "It was this constant suppression of angst, completely freaking out all the time. I would go home with total exhaustion." There is another interesting detail. Even those who watched the cult comedy many times didn't immediately notice that Jim played not one, but two characters in the film. In addition to being the main character, Carrey also made a brief appearance as Fire Marshal Bill, who can be seen in the background with a walkie-talkie in one of the scenes. Liar Liar was a huge box office success, earning over $300 million on a budget of $45 million. The reviews also pleased the performers, with an average rating of 8 out of 10 on Rotten Tomatoes. Even Roger Ebert, who was critical of all of Jim's previous work, praised the film. I'm gradually developing a suspicion, or perhaps it's a fear, that Jim Carrey is growing on me. But by this moment, Carrey understood that he was cramped in the image of a cheerful wimp. He began to dream of a bright, dramatic image that could reveal his talents, his soul, and potential. And the next role became the first stage of change in the career and life of Jim Carrey. Changes that led to a series of tragic events in the life of the actor. Why did the famous comedian begin to gradually disappear from movie screens? What is the reason for the hatred of Jim among other Hollywood actors? And is he responsible for the death of Carolyn White? You will find answers to these and other questions in the second part. And in order to watch it sooner, leave a like to this video. As soon as we get 10,000 likes, our team will release the second part. Well, if you want to not have a rest while we surf the internet in order to give you a new interesting biography, you can watch our other video and learn a lot of details about one of the best films of Jim Carrey, The Trueman Show.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
What makes this movie a masterpiece? Why didn't Carrey get an Oscar for it? And what serious problems does it raise? You may find the answers to these questions by clicking on this icon. Click and watch. As usual, it was the Biographer with you. Thank you for being with us. See you soon. Bye-bye.